everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Leanna. Today I'm coming at you with another review of a foundation. This is something that Arna sent me in the giveaway box. This is the Hourglass Seamless Finish Foundation Stick in the lightest shade Blanc. And this is actually something that quite a few of you recommended that I try and requested that I review, so I'm happy that I'm finally able to try it. This is what the packaging looks like. It's so cool. It's like a triangle and it's made of very heavy metal, which is very interesting because most foundation sticks are round. This one is not. And I've used it quite a few times. That's how much it's gone down. I don't know if you can see that. You twist it up and even the stick is in a triangle, which is, it's just really cool. So a little bit about this stick. This is expensive. This is $56 Canadian for 0.25 ounces, so not a lot of product. However, it is a solid and not a liquid, so that does kind of change how you use a product. There are 32 shades here that I can see. I'll put up a photo of the shade range as I always do. And this foundation is described as a weightless, waterproof foundation with long-wearing concentrated coverage in a custom triangular component for fast and easy, full coverage on the go. Coverage, full, finish, natural, formulation, stick, skin type, normal, dry, combination, and oily. It doesn't mention sensitive, however, I do have sensitive skin. I haven't had any breakouts or irritation. Ingredient callouts: free of mineral oil, parabens, phthalates, and triclosan. It contains less than 1% of synthetic fragrances. I don't really notice a fragrance to it, it just smells a little bit like makeup. This product is also vegan, cruelty-free, and gluten-free. What else you need to know: this long-wearing waterproof formula provides up to 12 hours of coverage, contains double the amount of pigment versus traditional foundations, and adjusts to your body temperature to effortlessly blend into the skin. Multiple shades can also be used to contour and highlight. Clinical results: based on a 1-week US clinical study of 32 women, 100% reported product was fast and easy to use and apply. 97% saw an immediate improvement in skin appearance, and 97% reported product effectively covered redness and skin imperfections. Now, they do recommend that you use the brush that was designed to go with it. That would be another $56. So I did not do that. I've been testing it out with different brushes that I have in my own collection. The closest that I have to the one they're recommending is this one here. This is the ultimate buffing brush that came in a Real Techniques gift set. I have, however, also tried it with a different Real Techniques brush as well as a flat kabuki brush. I've also tried it with my fingers. I haven't tried it with a sponge just because usually you don't blend out cream products with a sponge. So Blanc, the shade I have, is described as being very fair with cool undertones. I agree with that. I did do a swatch of every single one of my complexion products on my arm, and you can see that it is pink in comparison to some of the other products that I own. Blended out on my face, I don't see that it's pinker than the rest of me. I don't think that it's overly pink. However, I'm also not using it in a way that's overly full coverage. I think that if I built it up too much, maybe it would be a little too pink for my neck. I'm not sure. I've been using it in a fairly natural, medium coverage sort of way. So I've worn this quite a few different ways now. I've been using it with 3 different primers I've tried it with. I've tried it with powder, I've tried it without powder, and as I've said, I've tried it with different brushes. So I'm going to show you the different wear tests, and then I'm also going to show you, and then I'm also going to come back here and tell you my thoughts on this foundation. So here we are. I'm starting with the Hourglass Vanish stick in Blanc, and I'm drawing this on my right side of the face. It glides on really seamlessly, and it blends out really well with this Real Techniques buffing brush. I'm doing both sides of the face with this brush, and I'm using downward strokes instead of buffing it in circles, and it really does blend in so quickly and easily. On my forehead, I ended up going in with 2 layers, as you'll see here, and that went well. So then I'll just zoom you in closer. I think that this looks absolutely great. I didn't put anything under my eyes at this point, but I do later on. And it didn't cling to any dry patches. It looks so seamless. This is what it looks like in natural light. Again, it just looks great. The color is great. And so this time, everything went perfectly. Zooming out a bit so you can see the color match. I think it looks awesome. And now we're going to do a check-in with my brother. Yep, you're back there, all right. I'm trying to cover you up as much as possible. Yeah, they can't see you right now. Nope. I can make them see me. I'm allowing you on. Alright, now that he's gone, I'm using the Wet n Wild Photo Focus Primer on the right side of my face. It's a silicone primer. Nothing too fancy. And I'm using the L'Oreal Magic Lumi primer on the other side of my face, which is still a silicone primer, but it's a dewy finish primer. So now, of course, we're going in with the stick foundation, and I'm dotting it on, so it looks like I'm using a little bit more, but it's just because they're dots instead of streaks. I'm using the Real Techniques Expert Face Brush, which is a little bit smaller than the buffing brush. It's a little bit pinched in the center, so because of the size, it took a little bit longer to blend out. No big deal. It still blended out really easily. The only difference I found here was how it looked on the skin, and that I feel is because of the primers. So on the side with the L'Oreal, I feel like it looked pretty much the same, but with the Wet n Wild side, I think it did look a little bit more dry. On this wear test, I also decided to bring this up under my eyes and use it as concealer, which worked really well. I blended it out with a finger, and that worked perfectly fine. I actually think it covered my dark circles really well, and using it as an eye base worked fine too. So I'm bringing you in for a close-up. Overall, I still think that this looks like a great finish. It doesn't look dry. It still has a nice natural finish to it. I did just notice the tiniest bit of clinging on the Wet n Wild side. That's it. And here's what it looked like in natural light. Again, very natural. You can see, well, you can't really see, can you? You can't really see that it looks like I'm wearing anything, and that's kind of the point. This is the end of the day check-in. No, my brother's not here, so you'll just have to endure me on my own. I think it's looking a tiny bit shiny on the forehead, but that's kind of normal. Otherwise, everything looks fine. No dryness, not overly oily. Now we're going in for the third wear test. Again, just drawing the stick foundation on my face. And this time I'm using a flat top brush. This one blended the worst of 3 brushes I used. I don't know why. It's roughly the same size as the other brushes, but it just didn't blend as well. So that's just something to note. If you have some different brushes, that one doesn't work as well. Go for something a bit rounder. I also just wanted to see what it would look like blending this out with a brush around my eye area to see if it would get really dry up there, because that's where I do have more dryness than the rest of my face, and it looked fine. So again, drawing on the rest of my face and using the same brush, and I don't have any primers on at this point, just so you know. I did want to test this foundation out with powder on top, so I'm taking the E.l.f. loose HD powder in Sheer, which is a white HD powder. Just dusting that around my face with an Eco Tools brush. And that's on one side of my face. On the other side, I'm taking the Model's Prefer powder, which is a finishing veil, so it does have a little bit of sheen to it. So I just wanted to see how each one performed, because one is more matte and one is more shiny. So this is the matte side of my face up close. And, you know, I did put a fair amount of powder on. It still doesn't look too matte. And this is the more hydrated side of the face, I suppose you could say, even though it's a powder. And I do think there is a difference. You can see one is more matte than the other. And this is what things are looking like in natural light. That's the matte side. This is the finishing veil side. And that side definitely does look like it has just a little bit more of a sheen to it. Both sides still look really good though. Coming back in for the end of day check-in, this side doesn't look 100% matte, and it doesn't look super cakey. Neither side looks cakey, so this foundation wears very well, even around areas like my smile lines or up in my nose area where things tend to look bad. By the end of the day, it just looks very nice. So really enjoying this foundation. One last test though. I'm going to start with the Milk Makeup Blur Stick, and I'm putting that mainly in the center of my face and blending it out from there. Then going back in with the Hourglass Stick Foundation in Blanc. And on the right side of my face, I decided to try something a bit different. I decided to try blending this out with my fingers. And it does blend out still really easily with fingertips. If you wanted to do that, you could. I do think that this side of my face ended up looking worse than the side that I blended out with the brush. So I do think that the fingertips had something to do with it. However, I do think that the blur stick also had a play in that, because both sides looked worse than any of my other wear tests prior, and the only difference is the blur stick, and the blur stick doesn't tend to look good under foundations, as I've noticed in other wear tests. And for this side of my face, I am going back to that first buffing brush that I used in the very first wear test. This one was my favorite brush to use. So coming in close up, you probably can't see what I'm seeing in person, but this side of my face really doesn't look good. There were a lot of places where it was kind of balling up with weird texture around my hairline, in the center of my forehead, and in the center of my nose. On the other side of my face here, it didn't look quite as bad, but it still didn't look great. This was definitely the worst day for me. And yeah, it just sunk into my pores on my nose. But I'm still going to try a different powder today as well. I'm going to try the Annabelle Perfect Matte powder, which is a pressed powder, and just see how that goes. So this is after powdering. It took down a little bit of the shine, not a lot, because this is a natural finish foundation. It didn't make anything look really worse than it already looked before, so that's good. But having said that, it didn't make anything look better either. This just wasn't the best day, and it definitely, I feel, was the blur stick. I don't know if you can see that patch on my nose there. It was not a good look. So this is what it looks like in natural light. I don't know if you'll be able to see any better, but I figured for continuity's sake, I might as well show you. There's a close-up of my nose. That's definitely where it looked the worst. And for the end of the day check-in, it didn't get any worse than what it looked at the very start. So that's one thing I can say about this foundation. Whatever you get at the start of the day, it tends to stay that way so that's good. Even if it looks bad when you put it on, it doesn't tend to get any worse. But the only problem I had was definitely with the blur stick. And of course my mascara smudged a lot today too. Yay! So I'm actually wearing it right now during my final wear test. However, I can already tell you what I feel about this foundation. And that is to say that I really like it. I do have normal skin, however in the wintertime I do have some dry spots. That's just the way our climate is. It's very dry in the wintertime here, as I'm sure it is in many other areas. So I haven't really had too many issues at all with this foundation, no matter how I try it. Today has been the worst, and that has been using the Milk Blur Stick. On this side, I blended it with my fingers. That looked pretty bad. On the other side, I used it with buffing brush as usual. That looked slightly better, however, the blur stick is definitely at fault, and the reason I know this is because I've used the blur stick under a few different foundations. It always makes the foundation look worse. And that's kind of stupid because it's supposed to blur pores, however, I feel like it makes my pores look worse whenever I wear it with foundation. I tend to use the blur stick whenever I'm using very light amounts of concealer. That's when it works best for me. Whenever I'm using heavier amounts of product, it just doesn't work. It makes things pill up and kind of, you know, like when you put on a heavy moisturizer and you put something on top and it kind of balls up. That tends to happen. That happened around my hairline today. And genuinely, it just made product sit on top of my pores here in a really strange way. So instead of blurring pores, it accentuates them when you're wearing more product on top. So definitely do not recommend that with this product. The other two primers, I found that they worked fine with this. This is more of a silicone based stick, and those two primers are more of a silicone base. They were both fine. Powdering the foundation worked fine. This is definitely more of a natural to dewy finish foundation, even with powder. Granted, I didn't powder heavily. I could still see that this looked a little bit on the radiant side. So if you don't like that, you won't like this foundation. However, I like that. I like that a lot. I think it looked beautiful. This shade matched my neck really well. I think that there are definitely a few gaps in their range of 32 shades. They could probably add a few more kind of in between all the way along, because they do start quite light and they do end quite deep, but it's kind of gaps throughout that are missing here and there in terms of undertones and just kind of jumping suddenly from one shade to the next. That's what I noticed, but you don't have to take my word for it because I'm white, so, and my shade is here. They have already added one shade expansion. I imagine they may do that again in the future. So overall, I definitely enjoy this foundation. I'm so grateful that Arna sent it because I really appreciate it. I probably wouldn't have been able to afford it otherwise. So tell me what you think of this foundation if you've tried it. Do you really like it like I do, or do you hate it? Either way, let me know. I post Mondays and Fridays here on this channel in the afternoons Eastern time. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye everyone.